drum solos are fine, they're important, but I think the main thing is to be able to play the drum set, the rhythm section. If I had a band, I'd rather have a drummer that maybe couldn't do that, but could swing the band. It's very, very important. Like the young man last night with Bob Minzer, I thought filled the bill very well. What he did was played with the rhythm section and listened to all the soloists and made his mark as a true rhythm section player. And I think that's the primary importance about the drum set. If you have the solo ability, then that's fine, that's secondary. But to have a lot of technique and not be able to swing, that's a no-no. So the reason I brought this particular snare drum to the front is I have a lot of students ask me, what kind of technique do you use? Well, that could be a week of recitals. I learned a certain technique from Murray Spivak in California. What I used to do years ago, I used to play this way. I learned from an old rudimental drummer that you hold the stick way up here this way, so that the entire hand is gripping the right hand, and over here, what they used to call the jackrabbit position, is the two fingers off the stick this way, and you play the conventional grip. By the way, the reason this came about years ago is because the drummer had to swing over the shoulder. There was no such thing as a snare drum stand. So at the angle of the drum, you had to assume this position. You couldn't very well do this because that looks awkward. So even now, we're playing match grip. It's a different story, but this is how this happened years ago because of the angle of the drum. Now, what I did, I always wanted to drop this stick down against the first joint of the first finger so that you can really feel the stick. And of course, the old rudimental guys, they were against that, but Murray Spivak wasn't. He said, yeah, bring it down here, and instead of two fingers up here, put the first finger over here. Now you have a guy here and a guy here with his fingers. Now, you hear people talk about the finger style of playing. That means you don't play everything with your fingers only. You have to play with fingers, wrist, and arm. The only time you play with fingers only is if you're doing something pianissimo, for instance, like this. Now that's all fingers. And somebody can come up and grab my wrist here and here, and that won't bother me because everything is done. That idea. And the finger never leaves the stick. It's always there. Fingers and wrist, fingers, wrist, and arm. It's very important that I bring up that issue because Murray always said that you don't play this way. And there's a lot of wasted motion there, and after you play 8 bars of that, or even 4 bars of that, you're tired. So by using the fingers along with the wrist and the arm, you take all that muscular load off your body so that you can play things very easily without too much stress. Now, the whole thing about the finger system is a squeeze and release. Now, I know I'm going beyond, but I have a limited amount of time, and I don't want to explain it halfway. I want to do it all the way. The crux of the finger system of playing is a squeeze and release. When you normally accent, we were taught to raise the stick a little higher to make an accent. With Murray's system, you do the same thing, only you don't have to go quite that high. And the squeeze and release is not so bad in this hand because of the lip effect. So that's because of this hand position. You have to assume this position. You come straight forward this way so that you can come back on impact. You do that. wrists, and arm. And when you see drummers, like the first guy I saw that played that way with so much fluidity was Papa Joe, Joe Jones. To me, the drummers up to that time were great, but he had something, he had the intensity of playing, and yet there was a fluidness about his playing. It was like watching a great fan dancer. You know, all the movements were graceful, and yet the intensity was there. And that's when you use all that you have here properly, you know. I think it's very important to get to the basics here, because as you know, when we talk about building a house, we don't start at the roof. We start with the foundation and the framework. So it's so important. If you don't do that, then you find yourself backtracking because something is put in front of you that you can't do it. You have to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and catch up on what's important. You know? So that's part of the technique that I use, and it's been working very well for me. I know it's been working very well for people like Joe Morello, who's done it for many years. I used to talk to Buddy about this. He said, "What's that?" And I said, "That's the fingering thing." I said, "You do it." He said, "No, I don't. I play drums." I said, "I know you play drums, but I said, you use that technique." I said, "I know you finally found your instrument when I saw that ad with you and the sousaphone, you know, the But, well, you know, I sure miss that guy. He's a great player. But he did it naturally. There are a lot of players that do it naturally. Joe Jones kind of did it naturally. And Joe did a lot of things that were amazing to me. Not only did he play this way, but sometimes you would see him control his right stick like this. And the stick would just be floating this way. But that was Joe. I mean, everybody has their little technical things. And when he did this on the cymbals, if you ever try that sometime, you're going to get a different sound out of the cymbal. And I was able to skull that out, and I asked him about it, you know, and he said, "Yeah, I do it for a certain effect." You know? So they're all kind of combinations. And as far as playing the match grip is concerned, that's fine. I've learned to do both. I think it's very important to do both. Because if you notice, years ago, a lot of us young drummers always played with this, the beat here, and the butt end of the stick over here, so you can easily turn over and back to this again, you know. So, are there any questions so far on this kind of technique? It's a very advanced technique, and it's probably unfair of me to get into that because it takes a while to do this. In order to make the accent and the blow at the same time. Because you can't start here, otherwise you have to do that, and that's not good. And the reason this works, I developed what we call a 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 paradiddle, which is based on all my teachings with Merv Spivak. And in order to do that, you have to use that system because you're playing this. In there and then come up with the accent on the same hand. So that rudiment is like right, left, left, right, left, right. So you see you're doing actually 3 beats on one hand, a bounce and an accent with one hand. So the muscles and everything have to be just right, because otherwise you do what we do like when you're doing this. I think Toscanini drove a guy crazy on doing that. After a while, instead of playing this, the guy was going. Made him so nervous, you know. And finally, I think the true story is this. I think it was the Philadelphia Symphony, and finally one of the drummers said, "I think I'm going to try something on Toscanini." So they took the Billy Gladstone rubber pad and put it on the drum. He didn't know it was a rubber pad, because if he probably found out it was a rubber pad, he'd probably say, get that thing out of there, you know. But anyway, he did it on the Gladstone pad, and he played it, and Toscanini went, bravissimo. But, you know, that's really something. I think it's the most difficult things to do are the real soft, delicate things that you do. I think they're the more demanding than the loud, boisterous thing. Because the people who play with a lot of dynamics and play with finesse are really something. I noticed the last few years, when I do things with the brushes, come down and do something with the brushes, even the young people, they just say, man, that's great. You know, you've taken them from this point down to a little tap dancing, Joe Jones brush thing, and it becomes very rhythmical and pleasant, you know. Then you can reach the climax after that. But that's some of the technique. I wanted to share that with you because it's very important in drumming, as we all know, that the hands and the feet have to come together, you know. And I want to share this with you. I learned two very important things from my father. Perfect coordination is when you think and play at the same time. The mind has to come with the body. If you try to anticipate here or anticipate there with the hands and feet, it's not going to happen. I can almost tell when a drummer makes a mistake, he'll shake his head. It's like, man, I tried that, but it didn't come off, you know. But perfect coordination, when you think and play at the same time, and when you learn to do that, then you got it together. And most road bands, you'll find those players hit it off about 100% of the time because they play every night. They've got a crack at the music 5 hours from Monday all the way through to Sunday. And therefore, that's why their dynamics are together and they play so well together, because they do it every night. A lot of youngsters say to me, well, how can you play a fast tempo? I said, well, very easy. I do it almost every day. And when you don't do it every day, it becomes foreign to you, you know. And that's why I always advocate not only practicing this way at home, like down the basement by yourself, you have to really get out and play with other players. A keyboard player, bass player, and a saxophone player, trumpet player. Then you start to play musically. Very, very important to do that. The other thing, my dad taught me, is when a band, small band or a big band, they're reading a chart. Dad used to say, okay, I want you to read this chart down. And they'd read it down and say, okay, now read it down again. Read it down again. He said, now let me hear you play the notes. Not read the notes, but play the notes. And there's a difference. The same thing goes in rhythm section. When you play something on the drum set, if just playing it is not good enough, but if you play it with some feel, that's where it's important. And you notice all the great drummers of today, they find the groove right off the bat. If there's a band leader doing this, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, they find it right away. But to me, Ellington and Basie were the greatest examples because they didn't give you that. If you notice, both of those great leaders were piano players, and they both started every composition with a rhythm section. And by the time they played 2 or 3 courses, there's no question where the time settled. So when the band came in, straight ahead. The beat was established, the groove was established. Well, because sometimes it's hard. If you get a band leader that gives it to you like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, man, I mean, that's like slapping you in the face. You know, you don't know where it is right now. And Benny Goodman, once in a while, instead of giving you like 1, 2, 1, he'd go like 1, 2, 1. Where's 1? You know, when you can't find 1, you better go home and start all over again. Or just quit and then start all over again. I remember one time when Tommy Dorsey was doing a television show, he was like 25 feet away from the band, and he always wanted to make sure the guys were paying attention. So here was one of his downbeats. He said, ready, fellas? Here we go. And that's the way some of those guys operated. Because we had to be alert all the time. I know there's a lot of wonderful drummers here in the audience today, but there's one that I've always respected. I'm just talking to him about, there's 3 classic records, to my knowledge, and that is, one is Shadow Wilson, Queer Street. And if you study that drum, it's only about a 4-bar break, but it shows you what you can do in a 4-bar break. It's a classic record with the Basie band, if you can get that. Another classic is Metronome All-Stars, where Buddy Rich was the drummer. And he played a 4-bar intro, and at first it was hard to tell whether he started on the upbeat or whether downbeat, but whatever he played, it's a classic thing of the time going this way, and coming out just right. And the third one, and he's in the audience now, and I had to try to play this. It's a Woody Herman record of I Got News for You. And the second chord is a saxophone takeoff on one of Bird's solos. And the things that this man played in between, I had to try to play that record. And I must say, I must have studied for 2 nights trying to figure out what this guy did. But he's in the audience, Don Lamont, one of our great drummers. Another thing is, I have to quote my dear wife on a few things because she was so right musically on so many issues. But she used to say, you've got to be before you become. Or you have to know where you came from in order to get where you're going. So it's so important for a lot of you young drummers to know where you came from. It wasn't for Joe Jones, Chick Webb, Big Sid Catlett, Joe Jones, Don Lamont, these kind of players, we wouldn't be playing today. So it's always great to know where you came from. Study those records, listen to what those guys played, and then also know where you're going. Study the new guys, Steve Gadd, Billy Cowell, Steve Smith, Neil Peart. I can go for another 5 minutes just talking about this side and this side. And that keeps you aware, not only visually, but also with the ears. So very important that you know that. I'm still looking back at some of the things that Chick Webb did and studying the things that Baby Dodds did. That's even back further yet. And then I study what the new players are doing today too, because there's so many changes and you got to stay up with everything. Okay, now, before we get to the drum set, any questions so far? Who wants to fire first? Yes. Steve could do musically that was great. He'd take a very simple march rhythm. Like when he did that record of 50 Ways, which is kind of old now, but a lot of people ask me, what did he do on that record? Well, I always like to go to the person himself. And Steve told me, he said, all I did, Lou, was play this march beat. They don't get anything in advance. The way he told me, he walked in the studio and Paul Simon said, I want you to hear the melody to this, and I want you to play something in there. I can't explain it. So when he heard the melody, he played that beat, but here's how he played it. All of a sudden, in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, that really takes a guy that's done his homework and that can really listen to a melody and put something in there that works. All the things that Tony Williams did with Miles Davis, those were all impromptu things. Those were things that only you could do on the bandstand at that particular time, and that's invention, pure invention. So what I'm trying to stress here is that the importance of knowing what's going on musically. One of my mentors was here last night, Max Roach. Max taught me how to play melodically as well as rhythmically, because for years I was basing everything I did on time, on rhythm. And Max said, Lou, you got to listen to the melody. If you're playing Cherokee, sing the melody, you know, weave in and out of that melody, and therefore you'll make the drum solo much more interesting. You'll not only make it rhythmically, but you'll make it so much more melodic. And it's a great tribute when you hear Max play, when you can walk up to him and say, I know the melody you were playing when you played that drum solo. So I learned an awful lot from Max, you know. I learned an awful lot from Big Sid Catlett. There's one of the guys that we don't talk too much about, but Big Sid taught me how to play this cymbal. Today, a lot of the guys reverse that cymbal upside down and really bang into it. Great, that's okay. But you show me the guy that can play this cymbal. In other words, don't overplay it. And when you play in back of a guy like Dizzy Gillespie or John Faddis or Jimmy Owens, well, they want to hear the clarity of the thing. They don't want to hear it. And we're inclined to do that sometimes, but if you can do it where you're playing. Looked like a little 7/8 stick, and he had that tremendous sound, and of course that's a touch, which we all talk about too. There's another thing about his drum set is you have to develop a touch on it. There's no question. I must not be getting to this guy right here. He's been sound asleep since I started. Oh, you only wait? Are you wait? I've never seen anybody sitting in an audience fall asleep during a drum solo. All right. Well, I'm sure you heard it with your eyes. I think you're closing your eyes and listening to me with your eyes closed. That's okay. Any more questions? Any more questions? No? Yeah, Jimmy. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Owens, a great trumpet player.
How did you come up with the idea to use two bass drums?
Well, Jimmy, as I said before, I learned to be a tap dancer. My sister was a great tap dancer, and then of course later on when Pearl and I got married, Bill Bailey, who to me was he was in a class with Teddy Hale, Baby Lawrence. I know a lot of you youngsters don't know Baby Lawrence or Teddy Hale. I know Don, you remember him. Yeah. And great dancers. I mean, fabulous dancers. And there again, I learned to be a tap dancer. So when I went to high school, I sketched out something in art class where I could utilize another drum sound and yet still keep the hi-hat here. And that's how it started. For me, I use this left bass drum only sometime when the music's required. If we're playing a heavy samba or something where I can use that bass drum, fine. Otherwise, I can play 3 or 4 tunes with my band or somebody else and not even use it at all. And of course, when it comes to solos, whatever ability you have, if you can duplicate down here what you can do with your hands, great. But that's how the idea started.
Can I ask you one other thing?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to the wonderful set that you gave Sammy Davis?
One of the what?
The drum set that you gave Sammy.
Oh, the gold set?
Yeah, I know.
You remember that?
I know that.
Well, we're talking about the wonderful Sammy Davis. When I was with Rogers Drum Company years ago, they gave me a present of a white pearl set with gold hardware. And I used it one time on the Tonight Show, and Sammy happened to be one of the guests. And when Sammy looked up on the bandstand, he came close and he said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, it's a present that Rogers Drum Company gave me." I want one, you know, because Sammy used to like to fool around playing drums. I said, "Well, I'll call up, find out how much it costs, you know." So I called the next day, and they said, "Yeah, Sammy can buy one of these. It costs him about $10,000. So Sammy said, "Well, can I borrow yours?" And I did. I let him have it. And as wild as you say that, Jimmy, because I let him use the set. I never got it back. So Altavis, I know Altavis very well. In fact, Sammy met Altavis on our show. She was one of the dancers on Pearl's show. So I just wrote to Altavis and I said, Altavis, I don't know if this is the right time to say this, but about a few years ago, I lent Sammy my set. If you can look at the garage, and if you see that set, can you send it back to me? So maybe I might get it back. I don't know. That's what happened. And I knew Sammy was enjoying it, so I figured, you know, I love him. I said, go ahead and have a ball with that set. And that particular set, you know, sometimes that can happen. The snare drum, the tom-tom, the bass drums were perfect. The heads and everything worked. And the cymbals and everything, you know. And I had a chance to see him about 7 years later, and I said, how's that set working out? He said, great, Lou, and walked away. Now there, you know, we talked about dancing and drumming, and when I went to Africa, I saw the ultimate in dancing and drumming. I never heard any sounds like that. I heard 7 or 8 young drummers from Ghana, and I heard that hollowed out tree trunk with a goat skin and the marvelous rhythms they played, and I'm still trying to figure out what it was. It just made me turn to different avenues. Instead of just staying here, I went this way, you know. But I never heard anything like that in my life. And the dancing, we're talking about Sammy, I had a chance to, just him and I, to do something with the dancing and the drumming. And that's why it's so important. When you think about dancers and drummers, they're like this, you know. We're all playing rhythm. That's so very important. Oh, I know the other issue. Somebody was saying, Lou, what technique did you use when you played with the 2 hands? I mean, with the 2 sticks with the hand. And of course, you know, I don't know if all you know, but my dad taught me how to play all the instruments, all the percussion instruments. I played vibes and xylophone and everything, but I found out later on that just to play vibes alone was a lifetime study for xylophone. And so I had to totally concentrate on playing drums and writing and composing. By that time, 27 hours a day was gone, you know. But in my studies of playing the muscle grip, I transformed that to the drum set so that I could use 2 sticks here, 2 sticks here. Now, Steve Gadd does something where he tapes 2 sticks together, but he plays them like this. And so he gets a real thick beat by doing this. But by doing the muscle grip, you can actually get a spread here where you can play this. That's it? Oh, okay. Well, if there's any more questions, I'll just, there's one.
Yeah, this is about the book that you mentioned before, Independence. I've been trying to find it in New York and I can't. So do you know what, was it still in print? So where can I find it?
Book on independence?
Yeah.
You mean Jimmy's book?
Is that Jimmy's or your book?
Oh, wait, that's Jimmy Shaker's book, the one I was referring to.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so I was looking
Yeah,
at the wrong
because
one.
that's pretty much like in most drum shops, I would say, when you take the Jimmy Shaver's book, yeah. Yeah.
And you said you don't keep time during your solos. What do you tell the band? You know, the rest of the guys.
Oh, yeah, I'm keeping time when I play the solos, yeah.
I mean, not counting, but counting.
Oh, not counting, yeah. Well, first of all, I had a chance to play with Bird and Dizzy, and they always told me never lose one, always know where one is, you know, because once you lose one, especially in a big band, it's a disaster, it really is. If some of the young drummers studied some of the things that Chick Webb and Joe Jones did, in those days when we played the out chorus, the shout chorus, there was always a setup about 4 or 8 bars of a drummer setting up that last chorus. And Bert, we talked about that yesterday. Boy, when they played that 4 bars or 8 bars, I mean, the band came right on in, you know. Yeah, well, if you do this, what you're talking about is what's happening with the band? Well, first of all, if you've got a good drummer, there's no question they should always know where one is, you know. If you're playing a tempo like this, you got 4 bars to play. But if you got a drummer that really doesn't really know what he's doing, and you got 4 bars. The whole band is going to say, "What the hell is he doing?" What kind of, you know, you lost one. You lost one. Now I'm not saying that you have to really do a real strict thing, because when you hear Elvin play, if you follow him, he's right on the money. And you tap your foot and he's right. And you'll look at it, you'll hear it, you'll say, "Wait, is that right?" Yes, it was right. But there are some drummers that really, they lose the band, you know, they lose the band. And you really have to play in context with what you're doing musically. That's so very important. Without having to count, don't destroy the creativity of your solo, you know. Because once you play and you're playing right, they'll follow you. If you've got good lead players in the band, they'll follow you. But if you don't set it up for them, that's it. It can be a total disaster. Because don't forget, like Basie said, you're in the driver's seat. The drummer's in the driver's seat. You can steer him this way, down this way, go up this way. You know? Yeah.
Would you play a shuffle?
Shuffle.
A shuffle beat?
Do what?
Would you play a shuffle beat?
A shuffle beat?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay, now, there's various ways that this is the way I did it in Duke's band. Duke always liked a good hard shuffle, so I used to do it this way. A little different, and what I did was I spelled this out. I did a sort of like, if you want to analyze it, it's like a flam accent with the flam on the 3rd beat. So in other words, like instead of this way, so it's like a triplet feel, see? Now you can play that shuffle this way also. You can do this. Either one will work. Yes, you have a question.
I teach high school kids, and I have a hard time telling them to get away from the bass drum pedal. It seems that they always want to overuse it. Are there any kind of either recordings or techniques that you can suggest that deal specifically with the bass drum?
Well, I tell you, my good man, I find out that they don't use enough of it. if they don't use it correctly, because I remember when Basie was trying out drummers for a while, and he was up at Nola Studios in New York, and most of the drummers that came in took their foot off the pedal, and Basie's going, bop-dee-dee, bop. And Basie's over there looking, and he said, I know we had a drummer, he came in here, I saw him sitting down. All he's doing, he's up in here, he's playing all the highs, and very timid. You can't do that. If you're going to play, your question is very good, if you're going to play time and play 4 beats to the bar, if you're playing a straight ahead thing, yeah, sure. You do what Joe Jones said. You play it so that you feel it and don't hear it. So you're always playing under the bass player. So if you're doing this, I'm playing 4 beats to the bar. I do it so you feel it, see? And that beater's coming back and it's very light and it's under the bass player. As opposed to this. Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. We talked about that yesterday. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of ring in the drums because I can have a player say, well, yeah, these drums are ringing a little too much for me, but if he plays and the band is up here, you don't hear that. And you have to have that carrying power. You know?
The only way to get flat.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'm going to play something for you, okay? But before we close.